Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Bebo. In this video, we're going to take a look at solving two-step equations that are in the form P multiplied by the quantity x plus q equals r. Essentially, these two-step equations are all going to involve parentheses. So the main goal is how do we solve these types of equations that are in the form P multiplied by the quantity x plus q equals r. So as a reminder, and these should already be in your notes for my students, how do we solve a two-step equation, or really any equation? So in order to solve an equation, we must isolate the variable and keep each side balanced, right? So whatever we do to one side of our equation, on one side of that equal sign, we have to do the same operation to the other side. Inverse operations, as a reminder, we have addition and subtraction as one set of inverse operations, right? If I add something and then subtract that same something, it's going to undo it. And then multiplying and dividing are inverse operations as well. So inverse operations can really just be thought of as opposites, or that they undo each other. So as you go through solving an equation, ask yourself, all right, what side of the equation is the variable on? What operations are currently being done to that variable? And then what are those inverse operations that we need to do to undo what's being done, again, to that variable? So focus on where the variable's at, figure out what the opposite is to that current operation, or operations in this case, that's currently happening to that variable. All right, so let's take a look at some examples. Now, with these equations that have parentheses, I like to show two methods for solving these types of equations. And for my students, you choose whatever method works best for you. So for method one, a lot of students will see those parentheses and know that based on what we've been talking about in past lessons and past units, we have something that's on the outside that is being multiplied to that entire set inside the parentheses. So a lot of students like to just distribute. So they'll go 3 times x and 3 times 5. So 3 times x is 3x, and then 3 times 5 is 15. And then that equals 45. And now what happens is we have a two-step equation, right? Just like we did in a previous lesson. So all we have to do at this point is get rid of that 15 that's being added, because again, we want to focus on whatever that adding or subtracting is first before we worry about what's being multiplied or divided to the variable. So we'll subtract 15 from both sides, and then we will have 3x equals 30. And then our last step is to divide. So we can divide both sides by 3, and then we get x equals 10. As a reminder, equations are awesome because you can easily go back and double check your answers. So if we take what we found for x and we plug it back into this original equation, so right now where I have that highlighted with the blue cursor, so if I put in 10 for x, we go through and do 10 plus 5, that's 15. And then 3 times 15 is 45. So we know we solved it correctly. Now I'm going to solve this equation, the same exact one, the same exact equation, but different method, right? Using a different method. So this one, what we're going to do first is if I see that this 3 is being multiplied to this entire quantity, well, the opposite of multiplying is to divide. So I actually could divide to start. What happens is this 3 divided by 3 cancels out, right? And I'm left with what's inside the parentheses. So this x, oops, except for we don't need the parentheses anymore. So we just need to write x plus 5. And then 45 divided by 3 is going to be 15. And then at this point, it's a one-step equation. So to get rid of that plus 5, we're going to subtract it from both sides of our equation. And then we'll have x equals 10. So we get the same exact answer, just a slightly different way. Method 1, we took like 3 steps to solve, right? Method 2, it did take 2 steps to solve. So either way works. We get the same exact answer. You choose whatever works best for you. So we're going to do the same exact thing with this, these other 2 problems, which again are the same exact problem, but we'll solve the first one using distributive property, and then the second one we'll do what is more, again, traditionally the 2-step equation. So solve 2 multiplied by the quantity of x plus 4 equals negative 20. We're going to start off by distributing for method 1. So 2 times x and 2 times 4, so that'll be 2x plus 8 equals negative 20. On this one, I'm going to be better and actually draw my line through the equal sign, because I know that's a really nice visual for a lot of students to just make sure we're doing the same thing to both sides of our equal sign. So make sure that we write, like for example in this next step, that we need to subtract 8. we can clearly see that we're doing that on both sides when we have that nice line there. So I know it's something I mentioned in previous videos. All right, so we're going to subtract 8, like I said, from both sides of the equation, and then we'll have 2x equals, because again, this cancels out, right? That's why we do that. So negative 20 minus 8 is going to be negative 28. And then again, x is not alone yet. We have one more step. So to divide both sides by 2, that'll get us to our final answer of x equals negative 14. Okay, so again, always take that extra time to double check that this is actually the solution. So if I take x equal negative 14, I plug it back in here, we have negative 14 plus 4, that's going to be negative 10. 2 times negative 10 does end up being negative 20, so we know we solved this correctly. All right, so for method 2, again, this time we're going to start off by dividing both sides of our equation by whatever that set of parentheses is being multiplied by, right? So in this case, 2. So we are going to divide both sides by 2, because again, we want to keep it balanced. This will cancel out, and then we'll be left with this x plus 4, and we don't need the parentheses anymore. And then negative 20 divided by 2 is going to be negative 10. And then our last step to get rid of this plus 4, we're going to subtract 4. And again, make sure we do that to both sides of our equation. And we get an answer of x equals negative 14. Okay? So we're going to take a look at just a handful more of these types of problems, and we'll kind of switch from using method 1 to method 2. But again, you choose whatever works best for you. Either method that you use, it's going to result, if you do all your steps correctly, will result in the same answer. All right, so starting with the one on the left, solve 5 multiplied by the quantity of n minus 2 equals negative 30. So I'll start off by drawing my line here. And this one, I will start off by just dividing by 5 on both sides. So since that whole group, right, of n minus 2 is being multiplied by 5, we can start off by dividing by 5. And then we'll have n minus 2, because this will cancel out. We'll have n minus 2 equals negative 6. And then all we have to do now is add 2 to both sides, and we get an answer of negative 4. So n equals negative 4. And that's it. So for the next one, solve negative 7, and then in parentheses 6 plus d equals 49. Again, this one we could solve either way. So this one I will go through and I'll distribute just so we can see what that looks like again. So we'll do negative 7 times 6 and then a negative 7 times d. So this will be negative 42 plus negative 7d equals 49. And then we just need to get rid of that constant first. So we're going to add 42, because since that's a negative 42, we want to make sure we add it, because the goal again is to make it cancel out, right? So we're going to add 42 to both sides. This will cancel out then. We'll be left with negative 7d equals, and then this is going to end up being 91. And then at this point, all we have to do is divide both sides by negative 7. And we're going to find that d equals negative 13. Okay, so third example on this page, we got 3 multiplied by the quantity of x minus 6 equals negative 12. This one I'll go back and do the same thing as I did on the last question. So I will actually distribute first, just so we can see what that looks like again. So we'll do 3 times the x and 3 times the 6. So this will be 3x minus 18 equals negative 12. Draw our line there. And then we're going to start off by getting rid of this constant. So if I'm subtracting 18, the opposite is to add 18. So we're going to do that on both sides of the equation. We'll be left with just the 3x. And then negative 12 plus 18 is going to be 6. And then our last step is to divide by 3. And we get x equals 2. All right, and then our last example, this one we'll go ahead and do basically the traditional two-step way of solving this equation that involves parentheses. So it says negative 2 multiplied by the quantity of y minus 3 equals 22. So we'll start off by dividing both sides by negative 2. Again, if it helps, you can draw that line. This negative 2 divided by negative 2 cancels out, which is why we do that. So we're left with this y minus 3 equals negative 11. And we just have one more step to solve, which is to add 3 to both sides. and we get y equals -8. So that's it for this video. Hopefully that helps you with solving two-step equations that involve parentheses. Remember, you have two choices. You can just distribute first and then turn it into what looks like a traditional two-step equation, or you could divide and then go from there. Thanks for watching. Make sure you check out the next video for examples that involve fractions and decimals.